Oh, Sony. What the hell did you think was gonna happen? That's literally impossible. Suck as villains. I genuinely hate this. Are you bending me over the Bible right now? What the hell is wrong with you? It does not get better. God, I hate this so much. I'm gonna have a stroke. What's up YouTube, my name is Gio, and on December 13th of 2024, Sony Pictures released Kraven the Hunter, another movie in their Spider-Man without Spider-Man universe. And while the film wasn't a complete dumpster fire that sucked harder than a girl on the Vegas Strip, it wasn't that great either. The movie had a budget of anywhere between $110 and $130 million. Now, a general rule for a movie to be profitable is that it needs to make at minimum 2x its budget. And you want to know how much Kraven made during its theatrical run? $62 million. To put that into perspective, Madam Web, another stain on the movie industry, made $100 million. Nearly double. So needless to say, I'm surprised that a higher up hasn't tried to burn the Sony Pictures lot to the ground, as the insurance money would be much more lucrative than the trash they are releasing. But it seems that Sony thinks differently, as on December 26th of 2024, during an interview with the LA Times, Sony Pictures at the time CEO Tony Vinicera, when asked about performance of the film studio while he was CEO, he said, quote, "We've had mostly very good results. Unfortunately, Kraven the Hunter that we launched last weekend and my last film launch is probably the worst launch we've had in the 7.5 years or so that didn't work out very well." Which I still don't understand, because the film is not a bad film. When pushed on the performance of the Spider-Man spin-off movies, Vinicera went on to say, Madam Web underperformed in theaters because the press just crucified it. It was not a bad film. It did great on Netflix. For some reason, the press decided that they didn't want us making these films out of Kraven and Madam Web, and the critics just destroyed them. They also did it with Venom, but the audience loved Venom and made Venom a massive hit. These are not terrible films. They're just destroyed by critics and the press for some reason. If we put another one out, it's gonna get destroyed, no matter how good or bad it is. Yeah, you must be smoking crack if you truly believe that. I understand you can't say these movies are bad, but are you really about to blame critics for your film's poor performance? You don't get to have not one, but 2 of your movies turn into internet memes and say they are good movies. But you know what? I could be wrong. Hell, before making this video, I've only ever seen Venom and Madam Web. Maybe the others just are given a bad rap. So in this video, we're going to review every Sony Pictures Spider-Man spin-off, and then rank them on a tier list, because everyone loves a good tier list. We got a lot of movies to cover, so if you end up enjoying the video, remember to hit that like and the subscribe button, and also let me know in the comment section down below, how would you rank these movies? Anyway, let's start off with the first film in this sinkhole of crap, Venom. Releasing in 2018, Venom kicked off this Sony Spider-Man-less universe, grossing over $850 million worldwide with a budget of $100 million, making it the most successful film of the bunch. Now, does it mean it's the best movie out of the 6? Look, the movie doesn't make me regret being born with the gift of sight or anything. However, it does suffer from some decently sized flaws. For context, the film opens up with a rocket ship crashing down in East Malaysia. The rocket is owned by a group called the Life Foundation, who are able to collect 3 out of the 4 alien symbiotes from the crash. Turns out the 4th hitched a ride on an injured astronaut and then a paramedic, before beginning the longest walk in film history. But we'll get to that later. For now, we are introduced to Eddie Brock and his fiancée Anne, Anne's a lawyer that currently has a case involving the Life Foundation, and Eddie is an investigative reporter. He's pretty popular too, I mean the man has a whole show and everything. Eddie's boss ends up getting him an interview with the CEO of the Life Foundation, Carlton Drake. However, he doesn't want Eddie to go full-on investigation on him, as the network just wants a simple in-and-out interview. Yeah, we all know where this is going. Regardless, after some sexy time, Eddie noticed an email on Anne's computer regarding the Life Foundation, and rather than respecting his fiance's work and privacy, Eddie inspects the confidential documents that were sent, to which he then uses as a way to turn the interview into an interrogation.
I don't know, how does it go about, say, testing pharmaceuticals?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Since your entire empire is kind of built on dead bodies, what about the legal cases?
Sorry?
The actual legal cases. We're not finished.
Yes, you are, Mr. Brock.
And like anyone with half a brain could tell you, disobeying and ignoring your boss leads to no job, violating your fiance's trust and getting her fired leads to no wedding, and both these scenarios combined leads to no apartment. Yeah, this man is one reason away from having tapes and a Netflix series. By the way, where is that lost symbiote that I'm sure is going to play an important part in this film? Still walking. Exhilarating. Anyway, the movie then jumps 6 months to where the Life Foundation has completed their first ever successful test with a symbiote merging with a rabbit. They believe that the merge will only work if the symbiote and the host are an exact match.
It's similar to an organ transplant.
Where the donor and recipient must be an exact match?
So despite the scientists' protests, Drake starts human trials, which don't go very well. Anyway, we then get to see Eddie's new normal after nuking his life. And I gotta say, the film does this very well. We get a nice contrast between these two times, and it does a great job at showing how far Eddie has fallen. He's straight up done with everything, barely takes care of himself, and when the scientist from the Life Foundation comes to him and tries to expose Drake's unethical practices, Eddie just shuts her down. However, there's nothing like a metaphorical kick in the testicles by seeing your ex-fiance's new, more successful partner, Dan, to get your ass into gear. So the scientist sneaks Eddie into the lab, and after taking some pictures of experiments, we finally get the symbiote. A third of the way into the movie. Christ, this is slow, but okay, I'm sure we are bound to finally get some Venom soon, right? Well, kinda, as Eddie unknowingly uses some enhanced abilities to escape, but no visual symbiote just yet. However, we do have Eddie doing the only natural reaction to when an alien species decides to set up camp up your ass, freaking the f*** out. Anyway, we cut back to the symbiote from the start of the movie, who's in Hong Kong?
Passengers for flight 517 to San Francisco via Hong Kong.
Wait a goddamn minute. You're telling me you walked all the way from Malaysia to Hong Kong? First off, that's literally impossible. At some point, a ferry or something needs to be taken to get to Hong Kong International Airport. But let's assume that at the last possible point, this symbiote takes a ferry. Hey, it's smart enough to go into an airport to get to San Francisco. I think it's smart enough to take one boat ride. The walk from Malaysia to and through the Zhuhai Maku Bridge, wow, I definitely butchered that name, and to Hong Kong International Airport would take over 762 hours. Rounding that up to 800 just to give the film some leeway means that it should have taken 33 days. 1 fucking month to make it to San Francisco. Hell, we could triple that time just because, and it still won't equal to the 6 months the movie tells you. It's not like the symbiote changed hosts since we last saw it, so that means that from the start, it knew it had to get to San Francisco, and it was locked in. Meaning that this timeline doesn't make a lick of sense if you just think about it for more than 10 minutes. It's not like anything happened in the time jump that required 6 months to have passed. Hell, Eddie had his life flipped upside down in one scene, so you could have at least cut this time in half or something. God, if I had $1 for every time I've had to whip out Google Maps to prove a movie or show's timeline of events is complete bullshit, I'd have about $2, which isn't a lot, but it's crazy it's happened twice. Well, that was a fun tangent. So, what has Eddie been up to since I started my rant? Oh, well, while this exorcism is happening, we learn a little bit about the symbiotes from Drake and his team. Like how they feed off the organs of the host, have a weakness to high-frequency sounds, which explains Eddie's MRI meltdown, and that even if at first the host is stable, it doesn't mean that they're compatible. Drake also learns who the scientist was that helped Eddie into the facility, so after killing her, he sends his men to bring him Brock. But finally, we finally get our first look at Venom. Thank God, it only took close to 50 minutes? Are you kidding me? Okay, this is a huge problem with the movie. The pacing is horrific. Like I said, the film does a great job at setting up Eddie's life before he screws it all up. The only problem is that the pacing at the start is so slow, I feel like I'm going backwards in time. Eddie doesn't get Venom until 35 minutes into the film, which he proceeds to freak out for another 30 minutes. And then we finally get to see what Venom can do close to an hour into the movie. Let's put this into perspective. In Spider-Man 1, Peter got bit by the spider within the first 10 minutes. And by the 35-minute mark, he has already climbed a wall, tried to web swing, and even designed a suit. In Iron Man, we first see Tony get attacked in the opening 5 minutes, followed by the aftermath of the attack at the 16-minute mark, and finally, Tony starts building his first suit by the 25-minute mark. You can't have Eddie finally discover Venom 50 minutes into an hour and 30-minute movie, because we have so much we need to develop. Venom's character, his relationship with Eddie, what his plan is on Earth, and literally anything about the other symbiote who's Forrest Gumped their way across Asia. However, we do finally get our first Venom fight scene, which, I must admit, is very well done. I love how every action is against Eddie's will, as we see Venom take control of individual limbs to have Eddie fight, all leading to a full-on Venom transformation, as well as his healing abilities. Anyway, the two manage to escape and finally meet face to face, or face to floating goop. We get a little more exposition here, like how the symbiote's plans revolve around finding Drake. Granted, we get nothing specific, so I still don't have a goddamn clue what's going on, but we get this very important detail.
You did not find us. We found you.
I believe this confirms that it's up to the symbiote on whether the host dies or not, which is a huge relief, because if that wasn't the case and we were just basing the rules off of what these dickheads said,
Where the donor and recipient must be an exact match?
But once again, it's killing the host, it's consuming his organ.
I'd have more questions than a wife has when her husband is late from work, especially because that means that this child the hitchhiking symbiote overshadowed would have been screwed 16 ways to Sunday. On a side note, can you imagine flying back home from a trip and as you get into your taxi, you lose your child? God, this parent's getting divorced, losing custody, and hell, might be even getting arrested due to child neglect. Back with Eddie, he leaves his evidence of Drake's experiments at his ex-boss's office before being stopped by the cops. And I just gotta say, enjoy these fight scenes, because trust me when I tell you that after this movie, it is all downhill from here. These give off a real predator hunting his prey vibe, and it works really well to highlight how terrifying it must be to fight Venom. But before he can turn any of these policemen into a midnight snack, Anne shows up to bring Eddie to the hospital, and we get another tidbit that fire is another weakness of these symbiotes. Meanwhile, the symbiote from the beginning of the movie has finally made its way to the Life Foundation and merged with Drake. Back with our heroes, Dan tries to tell Eddie that Venom is killing him, which leads to Venom lashing out against Dan. Luckily, in a surprisingly smart move for this movie, Anne quickly activates the MRI machine, using the sound to force Venom out of Eddie, who is pretty pissed that Venom was killing him, so he storms out. Venom tries to rejoin with him, but is too late as Drake's men has already taken him away. It's during this abduction that Eddie learns that Drake has his own symbiote now named Riot, and we finally figure out their plan. Riot wants to fuse with Drake so the two can send another rocket to bring more symbiotes to Earth.
That's it?
Yep, that was the grand plan of our final villain of the movie, and I think now is the perfect time to say this. Ryan and Carlton Drake suck as villains. They are so boring. Drake is just your stock evil scientist who wants to make the world a better place but doesn't care who he hurts to get there. His belief in the symbiotes being the next step in modern medicine is what makes it so easy for Riot to get Drake on his side. But what makes them so uninteresting is that they have no direct connection to Eddie or Venom that would make the audience want to see them get taken down. Almost every good villain in a superhero movie has some kind of connection with the hero, and it doesn't need to be a lot. The best example is Hela from Thor Ragnarok. Thor interacts with her 2 times in the movie, during her initial introduction and their final fight. However, what makes this work for Hela is during this first encounter, she destroys Mjolnir, directly creating Thor's internal conflict that he needs to overcome during the film. Hela is the catalyst for Thor's growth, and thus it makes the audience more invested in seeing her be taken down. The closest Drake came from directly affecting Eddie is that it was their interview that sent his whole life down the shitter. However, the problem with that is that it was all Eddie's fault. He disobeyed his boss and turned this interview into an investigation. He was the one who searched Anne's files to get potential dirt on Drake, and he was the one who decided to go through with his plans, knowing that it could not just put his job in jeopardy, but also Anne's. Drake just so happened to be the one he interviewed. You could switch him out with any other evil villain, and nothing would change. And Riot? Christ, the only connection that he has with Venom is that they're both symbiotes. Anyway, Drake's men takes Eddie to the forest to kill him, even though they could have done it in the lab where, 17 different experiments died, but sure, let's just make it more difficult, especially when Venom with Anne as a host comes in to save Eddie. And as the two rejoin and start to head towards the lab to stop Drake from launching his rocket, we get this.
And you were gonna come back here with an invasion force. Then what were you gonna do? You were gonna go feed on the whole planet?
Yes, but it is different now, Eddie. I have decided to stay. On my planet, I am kind of a loser, like you. But here, we could be more. And I am getting to like it here.
I hate this. I genuinely hate this. Again, this is the problem with the pacing, because we used none of our time before to develop any of these characters. We now have to shove all this stuff about Venom's and Raya's backstory into the last 15 minutes of the movie. Like, what the hell showed that Venom was growing to enjoy this planet besides one Assassin's Creed synchronization?
It is peaceful up here. Your world is not so ugly after all.
Last I checked, most of Venom's screen time with Eddie consisted of fighting and vague exposition. Nothing really that helps connect these two. As a result, it makes these moments towards the end of the movie, especially when Venom revives Eddie after he dies, feel unearned. Speaking of which, that final fight is just really uncompelling, mainly because Riot's design just isn't that interesting. It's just a gray version of Venom, making the final fight as visually interesting as watching paint dry. Regardless, Venom destroys the rocket, Eddie gets some of his reputation back, and the two agree to be lethal protectors. And that is Venom. Overall, while it isn't the worst movie I've ever seen, it's still a struggle to sit through. The slow pacing really screws this film over in numerous ways. So with that in mind, I'm gonna put Venom in C tier. It's the definition of mid as hell. Next up is this film's direct sequel, Venom: Let There Be Carnage. This is an interesting one because on the surface the film is more entertaining than its predecessor, but calling it good would be taking a bigger leap than Evil f***ing Knievel. For context, Venom: Let There Be Carnage released on October 1st of 2021 and grossed $506 million on a budget of $110 million more, only to make a little more than half of what the first film made. What's interesting about this number though is that if you compare the films side by side, you'd see that domestically, the two movies made about the same. Where Let There Be Carnage took a hit was in the international markets. Granted, this could have been the result of other countries slowly ending the lockdowns for the pandemic around this time, but I don't have enough data to make a hard theory. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Anyway, this sequel opens up with a backstory for a couple of our villains. Congratulations, film! You've already exceeded the incredibly low bar set by the first film. This is Cletus Cassidy and Francis Barrison, two kids from, and I swear, this is the actual name of the facility, St. Estes Home for Unwanted Children.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, this place breeds psychopaths. Cassidy's distraught as Frances is being taken away due to her metahuman abilities to create supersonic screams, similar to someone like Black Canary. During her transfer to the facility, she ends up attacking one of the officers. This is Patrick Mulligan. While now he's just an officer, he'll eventually become a detective and contribute absolutely nothing to the rest of the movie, except for being a target for Frances after he shoots her in the face, which she somehow survives, and we see her locked away in a soundproof cage as we cut to present day. We see that Detective Mulligan is asking Eddie for help with getting information from Cassidy because, big surprise, the kid who lived in a place called the Home for Unwanted Children turned into a serial killer. However, some of his victims' bodies are yet to be found, and the only person he will talk to is Eddie for some reason. Mulligan throws one more verbal jab into the conversation, and here is where Venom comes out for the first time in the movie. And let me tell ya, this is a drastically different tone from the first film. Here, it's a lot more lighthearted and comedic, which kinda works. I'm reluctant to say it fully works because while it does add a lot more personality to Eddie and Venom's interactions, at some points they're written like an old married couple. I don't know. I guess as long as the comedic elements doesn't get out of hand in the third movie, I'm willing to let it slide here. Hi, yeah, spoiler alert, it ends up getting out of hand. Regardless, the main takeaway we get from this scene is how, according to Venom, Eddie is just a bottom feeder, afraid to make big moves.
Man should never consent to crawl when he has the impulse to fly. You are a bottom feeder.
This gives Eddie the extra push to do the interview with Cassidy, and wow, Eddie sucks at his job. We don't get anything substantial from Cassidy, just a bunch of cryptic phrases. Hell, Venom actually does all the work here. For context, Venom notices these weird drawings inside Cassidy's cell. After going home and playing the shittiest game of Pictionary, Venom recreates one of the drawings and somehow finds the exact view from the internet and deduces that this must be where Cassidy buried his victims. Jesus Christ, riding a motorcycle. There is so much stupid to unpack here. First off, why the hell didn't Eddie think to further investigate these drawings? Like, what happened to the investigative reporter that had his own show? What, is Eddie incompetent unless the evidence is gift wrapped for him? It's a massive retcon of Eddie's very limited character from the first movie. And secondly, how, on God's green earth, was Venom able to not just find a perfect match of these random ass lines, but actually knew exactly what to look up to find them? Don't believe me? Fine, here are some scribbles that I ended up drawing. Now, see if you could use Google to find this exact image, and let me know down in the comment section down below. Go on, I'll wait. Besides the point, Eddie is seen as a hero for publishing his story and finally finding the bodies. Obviously Cassidy's pissed, his ass just got the death penalty, but so is the detective? Why? What, because you weren't the one to find the bodies? Who the hell cares? The families of these victims finally have closure and a dangerous serial killer is being put to death, so I'm gonna need you to take that stick out of your ass and shut up. Anyway, Eddie seems to have revived his career, but Venom is starting to become uneasy as he wants to do more work as, how he puts it, a lethal protector.
We should be out there, protecting the city, lethally!
You know, solving cases, putting the bad guys away, and possibly eating a few. However, Eddie advises against this, as apparently the FBI still has an eye on them for everything that happened with Drake and the rocket from the first film. Which becomes a moot point when in the literal next scene, Venom saves someone while looking for food. Yeah, because let's gamble and hope that this lady doesn't file a police report and that gets flagged. FBI, open up! Anyway, during this late night snack run, Anne ends up giving Eddie a call saying she wants to talk over dinner. Needless to say, Eddie and Venom are on the top of the world, feeling like they're gonna get at her back, only to get the news that she's engaged.
Excuse me for one moment.
Hey, Barney!
Yeah, and after Anne tells Eddie that he will never change, which is hilariously accurate for this trilogy, Eddie goes into a full-on post-breakup style slump. Luckily, much like most breakup depressions, the best solution is true crime, as Eddie gets a letter from Cassidy, which illustrates his backstory as a troubled kid who had one light in his life, referring to Francis. And I must give praise here, this is a visually great way to show the audience some of Cassidy's backstory, while still getting across how unhinged he is. The end of the letter is an invitation for Eddie to talk to him before his execution. Eddie decides they should go, even though Venom thinks this is a bad idea, which he isn't entirely wrong about, considering that the whole conversation consists of Cassidy basically talking shit about Eddie before Venom snaps. The two have a scuffle where Cassidy takes a bite out of Venom before the guards end up breaking up the fight. Again, so much for trying to stay under the radar. I mean, Christ, this is a prison. This fight probably got caught on 3 cameras alone. And to no one's surprise, Eddie is just as pissed, as him and Venom have a blowout fight that would put some breakups to shame. I mean that literally. Like, this scene may be the perfect representation of the change in tone from the first movie. If you switched out Venom with a woman, this would be a more stereotypical couples fight than anything in a Hallmark movie.
I didn't mean to.
You didn't mean to?
And I said I'm sorry.
You didn't mean to, but you did it.
Okay, this is about me wanting to live without you, whining in my ear all the time about eating bad guys or like nagging me.
I am not pushing you away, Lucas. I am holding on for dear life.
Get out! Take your stuff! Get out!
Well, this bit of domestic violence leads to Venom breaking off with Eddie and going on his own. And while we're taking sides here, I might as well say that Venom's actually 100% correct when he said he is responsible for Eddie's life improving.
Let me remind you of something, Eddie. You were a loser before I came along. You were nothing. I made you special.
You know what? I rebuilt my life and now I just want to live it. Good night.
And how did you build this new life?
Think about it. It was Venom who found the drawings on Cassidy's wall.
Eddie, look. What do you do?
Venom who memorized them to do further research, and Venom who found the locations of the body. Hell, all Eddie did was slap his name on it and called it a day. Anyway, the film cuts to Cassidy's execution, and we get to see that due to this psychopath taking a bite into Venom, leads to a new symbiote being born inside of him, called Carnage, which I can only assume was named that after the massacre that Cassidy went on while escaping the prison. Detective Mulligan warns Eddie about this information and suggests that he lays low. Obviously, he doesn't listen and tries to use his own skills in order to figure out where Cassidy might go. Okay, Eddie, okay, I see you trying to finally move the plot forward on your own. Alright, good on him. Wonder what Venom's doing.
You love me! And I'm free!
Are you bending me over the Bible right now? What the Exodus 23:12 word for is this? What's the point of Eddie warning to not draw attention if Venom's just gonna be as public as Jack Dorsey's stupid ass antics? And spoiler, there is no consequences for Venom just flaunting himself around like this. Meaning, that warning was just a way for the movie to create unearned conflict between Eddie and Venom. Meanwhile, with the Menendez brothers, the two strike up a deal. Carnage will help Cassidy break Frances out of where she's being held, and in return, Cassidy will bring him to Eddie and Venom. So, in order to find her, Carnage sticks his fingers into an internet port to get the location.
What the hell did you just say?
Sure, it's not like this is a power that only appears in this one section because the writers realized Cassidy had no way of figuring out Frances' location without some ass-pull reason. It also makes Carnage brain dead too, because he could have definitely used his ability to find out where Eddie is, rather than needing Cassidy. But sure, let's just roll with it, as Cassidy breaks Frances out of prison, and the three begin their hunt for Eddie and Venom. Speaking of the prior, Eddie actually finds the connection between Frances and Cassidy, but is completely shut down by the detective, as he rightfully believes that she's dead. Wow. Wow, congratulations, Eddie. You managed to do piss all throughout the whole movie. Alright, what about Venom?
I wish you could have seen me tonight, Eddie.
Oh, he's moping about Eddie. Not to be a little insensitive, I'd rather be a lot insensitive when I say, fucking why? Like, this is actually important if we want any kind of character growth for Venom. Having just this line leads us to believe that he just wants Eddie around because he's familiar, rather than any actual positive traits he may have. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be shocked that a symbiote has a codependent relationship with his host. A host who has been brought into police custody, as he seems to be at the center point of all this crazy stuff that's been happening in San Francisco. It's here where Eddie pieces together that Cassidy has a symbiote, and realizes that he's going to need Venom. So working with Anne as his lawyer, she goes to try and bring Venom back. Granted, it took a little sexy talk, but in no time, Venom breaks Eddie out. Now, rather than having a moment where these two parties involved acknowledge both of their flaws and promise to do better, we just have a one-sided forced apology by Eddie, which is good enough for Venom as he reunites with him.
We're not doing shit until he apologizes.
Right now, an apology.
I need him to beg.
All right, listen to this. I am sorry.
Not the right tone.
I'm sorry.
No.
I am sorry.
F*** you.
And here is where we are going to start to see a recurring problem with all these movies. That being characters with no arcs. Seriously, Eddie and Venom don't change at all during this movie. They are the same characters at the end as what they are from the beginning. Not to jump too far ahead, but in the climax, what gives these two the edge against Cassidy is the fact that they are apparently more in sync. While yes, they were out of sync at the start of this movie, it doesn't make a difference as we never see this affect their combat abilities. And two, this never actually gets resolved. The movie just says it does with a forced apology and then gets ready for the final fight. The whole point of separating Eddie and Venom should be for each of them to value what the other half brings to the table. But nope, we get nothing. Thankfully, we at least get a little bit of consistent writing as Detective Mulligan finds Cassidy at Eddie's place, which actually makes perfect sense based on the position each of these characters are in and their goals. Obviously, the villains are here as Cassidy was shown to know Eddie's address. The detective makes sense as he's out looking for Eddie, so his home would be the natural first spot. Fortunately, Eddie isn't home. But unfortunately, Frances ends up learning about Anne and decides that she'll be the perfect bait to lure Eddie. Trust me when I say, enjoy this little bit of consistent writing, because when it comes to these movies, that shit's more rare than a shiny Pokemon.
Oh, no way! No way!
So our villains take Anne and Mulligan while leaving Dan to deliver where they are going to Eddie. So with new determination, Venom bursts into the church, ready to fight Carnage.
Oh shit!
Only to be scared shitless, because Carnage is a red symbiote, and apparently color represents difficulty now.
This is much worse than I thought. That is a red one. Wow! We should leave immediately.
But with the threat of Carnage eating their two hostages, he gets back into the fight, which, for the record, is much more visually interesting than the fight against Riot in the first film. Granted, that's a low bar to jump over, but I just need some light to get through this. Anyway, Frances squares off with Mulligan while Cassidy goes for Eddie, and it's here where we finally get an actual reason that Cassidy is targeting him.
Oh, how I spent my endless days. I spent them thinking about how you only told one side of the story. You didn't write about the part where Cletus was abused by Mommy, Daddy, and Granny!
What? Hey, jackass. May I ask, when the hell did you mention this? Seriously, I watched this movie 3 times. Dear God, why did I watch it 3 times? And not once before Eddie's story got published did he ever speak one word of this to him. All we got were cryptic word vomit. We never see Cassidy give Eddie anything that could make his situation look complex. So this feels like it comes out of nowhere, much like the way Venom beats Carnage. For context, throughout the fight, Carnage is slapping around Frances as her screams are constantly hurting him. Obviously, Cassidy doesn't want this, so we see some conflict between the two nutjobs. Eddie recognizes this and tells Venom that they themselves have an edge due to being in sync.
They're not symbiotic. They're not a match.
We are.
But the problem is that they don't end up fighting differently when they come to this realization. It's not like they were brute forcing it at the start and then once they spotted this weakness, they used a combination of Eddie's quick thinking and Venom's instincts to take down Carnage. No, instead they still proceeded to get their asses handed to them until they're at the top of the church's bell tower. Carnage is about to kill them, but the two notice Frances and decide to push her to her death and hope to God that she uses her sonic scream on the bell. Luckily, she does, separating Eddie and Cassidy from their symbiotes, and they begin to fall. Thanks to some help from Dan and Anne, Eddie is able to rejoin with Venom first, leading to our lethal protector eating both Carnage and Cassidy. However, with the cops closing in, Eddie and Venom have to go on the run. So, after some quick goodbyes, the two end up on the beaches of Mexico, as well as in the most useless cameo in cinematic history. Not once, but twice. Let There Be Carnage is a weird sequel. After my first viewing, I thought it was definitely better than the first movie. But that's just from the fact that I wasn't bored into a coma. Deciding to turn up the bickering between Eddie and Venom to where they start to sound like they're in a relationship was definitely a tonal shift from the original. But I'd be lying if I said that these interactions didn't make me chuckle here and there. Cletus Cassidy is also the most consistent character between these two movies. Yes, I know the bar is so low it's practically in the underworld, however, it was honestly surprising because when writing a psycho character, it's very easy just to make him do actions for no good reasons besides, hey, I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Ignoring his obvious asshole reason for not liking Eddie, all of Cassidy's actions are in service of him eventually getting Francis out of Ravencroft. On top of that, the way his origin is explained is very visually interesting. But during my second viewing, my god did it become more painful to sit through. And it's mainly because Venom and Eddie suck as characters. If these two were dating, they'd be in the most toxic relationship I have ever seen. Conflicts are set up just to have no payoffs. Eddie can't do his job to save his goddamn life, even though he used to have his own broadcast show. And Venom is just there to argue and maybe push the plot forward if he wants to. This is the biggest problem with Let There Be Carnage. There is absolutely zero character development found anywhere in this movie, and as a result, it feels like a bunch of moments stapled together rather than a well-constructed plot. When it comes to ranking this movie, I'm not gonna lie, I went back and forth on whether it was better or worse than Venom. However, what it came down to for me is the characters, and while some of the interactions with Eddie and Venom are enjoyable in this movie, I like them more in the original. I don't know what it is, but the second watch through really exposed so many issues with this film, so it stays in C tier, right below Venom. But it's very close. Now, let's move on to the movie that became a meme, Morbius. And here's the first film of the bunch that makes me question my life decisions. Morbius is just as bad as the memes led you to believe. It's also the first movie that didn't make a profit domestically, only making $73.8 million on a $75 million budget. Luckily for Sony, the international box office helped make the film barely profitable, grossing $176.4 million, as well as leading to the creation of millions of memes across the internet, all revolving around the idea of Morbius being the greatest comic book movie of all time. I mean, to this day, if you look at the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, you'll be met with reviews such as this. Morbius is peak cinema. Words can't describe how breathtaking Dr. Morbius is. He's an absolute pleasure for all shapes and sizes. I can't wait for Morbius 2. It's Morbin time. But in the biggest hello my fellow kids moment I've ever seen, Sony took these memes seriously and thought it was a good idea to re-release Morbius to 1,000 theaters. And I must say I'm shocked because they actually ended up managing to raise $280,000.
Well, I'm sorry, you're a dumbass.
Yeah, Sony's fucking stupid. But, memes aside, how bad is the movie? Well, surprisingly, the film starts off decently. We're introduced to our main character, Michael Morbius, who ever since he was a kid has a rare condition called plot disease. Okay, they never actually named the disease, but come on, you have a whole ass facility for this and you never thought of a name for the damn thing? Regardless, we learned that 1, it's a blood disease, and 2, it's a result of missing a certain DNA gene.
How long have you been here?
As long as I can remember.
And you're still not cured?
There is no cure. There's something missing from our DNA, like a piece of a puzzle.
We also see that Morbius was a child prodigy, saving another kid named Milo who has the same illness and will eventually be his best friend. Now in present day, Morbius believes that the missing piece he needs for a cure is found within vampire bats. So after successfully completing some highly illegal experiments on mice, he decides to do some extremely illegal human trials on himself in international waters. However, once his doctor friend Martina injects him with the serum, he starts to transform into a super-powered vampire. He ends up going absolutely feral, killing all the hired mercenaries on the boat, and when Morbius comes to see what he did on the security cameras, he calls the Coast Guard before fleeing to the mainland. When he gets to his lab, he starts testing out his new powers, which consist of super strength, super speed, and echolocation. However, all these powers come with a caveat. That being, if he isn't periodically drinking blood, he will become weak and die. Luckily for Morbius, he is world renowned for his creation of artificial blood. But that only sustains him for 6 hours, and with each dose, that time shrinks. And unfortunately, after this scene is when the film starts to fall flat on his face. For context, during one of Morbius's tests on himself, Milo ends up paying him a visit. After getting him some artificial blood to refuel, Milo is ecstatic that his friend has found a cure for their disease. Morbius, however, shuts Milo down. Now, rather than, I don't know, mention to him the side effects of this cure as being turned into Nosferatu, Morbius decides to be vague on why Milo can't take the cure.
I made a terrible mistake, Milo.
Michael, enough. Just give it to me. I need it. I can't live like this any longer.
I can't. I've done things, Milo. I killed people.
I can't control it!
It's a curse.
I'm sorry. Why? What's the point of hiding the side effects? The man just saw you down a pint of blood as if the winning lotto numbers were at the bottom. There really isn't any secret to hide anymore. Anyway, Milo begrudgingly leaves, and overnight, it seems as if Morbius kills a nurse and sucked her blood. I say seemingly because even on my first viewing, I didn't believe that for a millisecond. Why? Well, for one, Morbius is very technical and specific when it comes to testing how long he can go without blood. I mean, he's constantly not shutting up about it. 2, even during his first transformation, he showed restraint in not attacking Martina, only the hostile mercenaries. Finally, not only does he have batches of artificial blood infinitely closer than a random nurse, but he also has real blood in there. So it even covers that cravings. Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind that Morbius didn't kill her. But the same can't be said about the FBI. After investigating the ship of the first test and interviewing Martina, they go to talk to Morbius, which quickly turns into an attempt to arrest them after learning that the nurse was drained of her blood. Morbius flees to the roof with his super speed, but apparently this FBI agent is the f***ing Flash, because that's the only explanation on how he got from here to here within the same time it took the guy with powers. Anyway, Morbius is now locked up, and we learn that the artificial blood will stop sustaining him within a few days. However, when Milo comes to visit him, Morbius starts to think that maybe it's for the best that he stays locked up, especially if he doesn't even remember killing that nurse. Milo disagrees with this and leaves Morbius a bag of real blood before exiting the prison. This, along with the fact that Milo also left behind his cane he's been using throughout the whole movie, clues in Morbius that Milo took the cure and is now a vampire, leading Morbius to inhale the real blood in order to burst out of prison and stop his friend. Now, I'm not even going to question how Milo not only got blood into the prison without the guards knowing, or able to leave his cane in a cell, because this scene already is forcing me to ask a question that is giving me multiple aneurysms. That being, how in the blood-sucking fuck was Milo able to inject himself? Not only does the cure require a needle that's longer than my Pinocchio ass having nose, but is also injected into the spine. How is this possible? The film never explains this, but what really boggles my brain is that Milo has a caretaker who not only is a doctor, but is actually a character with a name instead of some random extra. This is Nicholas. He was the doctor that looked after Morbius and Milo when they were kids. So you could have Milo guilt him into giving him this cure, or something, rather than having the audience question how his crippled ass got to contort his way into that needle. Anyway, after a quick scuffle where we learn that drinking real blood has made Milo much stronger, Morbius goes to find Martina in hopes that she could help him make a serum to stop Milo. So because Morbius' face is plastered on every newspaper and television in the city, the two meet up in a private or a very public coffee place.
Not that kind of vampire.
This guy is fucking stupid!
What the hell is wrong with you? You might as well be wearing a flashing neon sign that says, "Hey, arrest me!" The fact that you actually got through med school with this brick level intelligence is beyond my comprehension. Regardless, Martina agrees to help, so while she goes to get supplies, Morbius gets the lab ready. After a Twilight-inspired makeout session, Morbius completes the antidote, but reveals that not only will it kill Milo, but he also plans to use it to kill himself. Martina tries to protest this, but is cut short when Morbius gets a call from Nicholas after Milo left him on the brink of death. So Morbius speeds over, only for him to die 5 minutes later. And then, in the same scene, Milo threatens Martina's life, and Morbius has to fly all the way back across the whole goddamn city to where he came from, only to find Martina's corpse.
That's just stupid.
This might possibly be some of the most boring series of events I've ever seen put to film. This is the theatrical equivalent of backtracking in a video game, and I dare you to find someone who actually enjoys that crap. Anyway, Morbius sucks some of Martina's blood to buff his stats, and goes to have a final fight with Milo. And you wanna know how Morbius wins when throughout the entire fight he's getting mollywopped? I'd bet my middle testicle that if y'all were watching this movie for the first time and I paused it at this scene right here and asked you that exact same question, none of you are getting it correct. To win this fight, Morbius summons bats. What? An ability that has never been shown or hinted at to be possible. The most we get is this scene.
I feel a kinship with these creatures. They would tear anyone else apart, but they welcome me.
Okay, and every squirrel I walk past doesn't maul my face. That doesn't mean I now have the ability to drop an ultimate in the middle of a fight. And that is Morbius. Normally I'd give you a few sentences before ending the summary, but this is how the movie ends. So I think I'm on brand here. It's truly baffling how bad this movie is. Milo may be one of the worst villains in history. His motivations are just so unclear. Like, I think what the film was trying to do is to have Milo take what he sees as revenge on healthy people. Like, at the start of the movie, we see Milo as a kid get bullied and couldn't do anything due to his condition, but now with these powers, he sees himself as better than others and sees it as his turn to do the bullying, I guess. Genuinely, this is the best answer I could give you. He even has this line he says a few times towards the end of the movie.
We are the few against the many.
Truthfully, I don't even know where to fit this into his motivations. Like, who the hell is the few? The many seem to be referring to normal people, but are the few the people with powers? Because as far as Milo is concerned, the only known other person with powers is the guy that's trying to stop him. Bottom line, the villain is a mess, the plot's a mess, and the whole movie is just a giant fucking mess. So referring to our tier list, this movie can kindly suck my dick. So, to D tier you go. Alright, so it looks like the next movie is... No. You can't do this to me. You can't make me watch this shit. Madam Web is the perfect example of what not to do while making a movie. I hate this film with a fiery passion. The plot is full of ass pulls, the main character is so powerful it kills any possible tension, and the other characters are just given nothing to work with. I mean, I've gotten more insight on characters on the back of a tricks box. At least there, the rabbit has some kind of internal struggle. And I am not the only one that feels this way about the film. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 55% audience rating and an 11% critic rating. That is bad. To make it worse, it was the first one of these movies to not even come close to making some kind of profit. The movie had a budget anywhere from 80 to 100 million. I couldn't find a solid number. And you know how much this movie made domestically? 43 million.
I can smell the failure.
That is horrendous. Worldwide, they barely scratched together 100 million. So to say this movie bombed would be the biggest understatement of the year. And this year isn't even halfway done. So, where did it all go wrong? Well, let's start from the beginning. The film's opening introduces us to a pregnant plot device as she's looking for a mystical spider in the Amazon. This spider's venom is believed to have the ability to cure all kinds of diseases. Plot device finds it, but is betrayed by this movie's villain, Ezekiel, who takes the spider for himself. However, before our plot device can die and in turn rescue us from having to suffer through 2 hours of this garbage, she is saved by the local spider tribe. This tribe not only has the powers of Spider-Man, but also has ease of access to the spider that was being searched for in the first place. So the spider bites our plot device, allowing her to give birth to a baby girl named Cassie, before biting the dust herself. And now we fast forward to Cassie living in New York City. How'd this secret tribe get her onto a plane or to an orphanage in the first place? Well, I doubt the movie knows because it's never answered or even questioned in the first place. But it's technically the inciting incident, so I'ma just roll with it. Regardless, Cassie has grown up to become an EMT with her partner, Ben Parker.
What the fuck did you just say?
Yeah, that Ben Parker. Anyway, this might possibly be the most boring introduction to any character in media. The main reason for that is the dialogue. It is the audio equivalent of watching paint dry or your kid's Little League game. Not T-ball, that's basically Royal Rumble for children. I mean, listen to this filth between two supposed friends.
I might adopt one. Return the favor.
I suspect you were a bit more of a handful than a puppy.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was a model foster kid. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's this one's name? Oh. Serious.
You have a winning personality. I guess I got yours by mistake.
You're an asshole.
Kill me. Just f***ing kill me. And it does not get better. Was this written by AI? Because I refuse to believe that anyone who has had an actual conversation with another human being would consider these acceptable lines. Anyway, after having a near-death experience while trying to save someone, Cassie starts to develop her powers, and I can't stress this enough when I say her abilities make zero sense. These powers have no rules, and they just seem to do whatever the plot needs them to do. For context, the best way to describe how these abilities work is that they're similar to precognition. Cassie will see a glimpse of the future and be able to use that information to change it. Already an incredibly powerful feat. However, this ability is more inconsistent than my upload schedule. One moment there are just premonitions, other times the film makes it feel like that she's traveling back in time. And once, she not only traveled back in time, but she also teleported to a different spot. All of these are the same powers, but are displayed in such drastically different ways that it leaves the audience confused on what the limits are on Cassie. The film had to choose one way to depict her powers and stick with it. Otherwise, it kills any possible stakes the film tries to build with its villain. Speaking of which, it's at this point we are reintroduced to Ezekiel, and we learn a couple things. For one, he has all the powers of Spider-Man except exchanging web shooting for a poisonous touch. And second, we see him having a dream of the future where he ends up fighting 3 different Spider-Women that will inevitably lead to his death. So he plans to get ahead of this by killing these 3 girls before they get their powers. So with the help of a one-night stand with a federal agent and a bit of persuasion, he gains access to facial recognition software to help in his search. And after a handful more conversations that have the same amount of charisma as a block of wood...
You don't think that maybe in light of recent events I could use a beer? Are you pressing the burgers?
I'm releasing the fat.
That's called flavor, man.
You must have at least one fond memory of your mother.
My mother actually died in childbirth.
And a few more inconsistent uses of Cassie's powers, we get to see this payoff as Ezekiel gets a hit on the girls. Which one, you may be asking? Well, funnily enough, all of them. Yep, Ezekiel's first lead is that coincidentally, all of his targets are in the subway station. But guess who else is there? That's right, Cassie. Yeah, normally I am very accepting of coincidences at the start of a movie in order to get the plot rolling, but dear lord, this is the mother of all coincidences, and it happened a third of the way into the movie, so my patience for this crap is already thin. Regardless, Cassie gets a vision of Ezekiel killing the 3 girls, so she decides to help them, but not without witnessing the extent of his powers, which, to be fair, isn't a lot considering Ezekiel f***ing sucks. Yeah, this moment is probably the best time for him to kill these girls. I mean, 3 of them don't have powers, and the other one can't even control hers. So, if he can't beat them here, what kind of threat does he hold when they are more prepared? You suck! Anyway, Cassie brings these girls to hide in the woods, and here we finally get introduced to the other characters. Julia Corwall, Anya Corazon, and Maddie Franklin. These 3 girls are probably the best things to come out of this movie. Not because they're anything good, no. Their best parts of the films are some of their interactions with each other, admittedly give me a chuckle. No, I'm talking about introducing me to 3 of some of the most attractive women in Hollywood right now. Julia is played by Sydney Sweeney, who needs no introduction, as I'm pretty sure I've seen guys offer up their souls just for a minute with her. Seriously, a little peek behind the curtains here. I had a lot of these notes made when Madam Web first came out. Hell, I was going to make my own separate video on it. And I swear there was a section in there was a note that said, and I quote, "Julia is who was making Twitter thirsty." Anya is played by Isabella Merced. God, I'm sorry, I definitely butchered that last name. Who's playing Hawkgirl in James Gunn's DC universe. And if she is anything like the version in Justice League Unlimited...
If you want one for Vixen, I can tell you where I got it.
Yeah, not only am I committing war crimes for her, but I'm going to be incredibly biased when that movie comes out. And Maddie is played by Celeste O'Connor, whose stuff I've not seen, but she still makes me weak in the knees. Drooling aside, you're probably wondering why I haven't gone into any deeper description into these girls. And that is because there is nothing deeper. I feel so bad for these actresses, because all of their characters are just tropes. Julia is the soft-spoken one, Anya is the disciplined one, and Maddie is the rebel. F*** me, they're the Powerpuff Girls! Anyway, Cassie ends up leaving the girls in order to grab some of her mother's research, hoping it could lead to any answers of what she is going through. Meanwhile, the future Spider-Girls completely ignore their orders to stay put and go to a diner to grab something to eat. This leads to a random guy recognizing them as the missing girls from the city and calls in a tip to the police. That tip gets intercepted by, you guessed it, Ezekiel. As a result, when Cassie realizes she's too late to stop Ezekiel from sending these girls to their second lives, she runs it back, reversing time in order to bash Ezekiel with her car and escape with the girls. Now, looking at my notes, you could tell that it was at this point where I just snapped. I mean, look at all of this red. I haven't gotten this irritated at something since The Flash. I hate to beat a dead horse, but Cassie's powers just take away any stakes that could possibly arrive from a villain who's basically Spider-Man that could kill you with a touch. What makes this even worse is that not even the smaller moments in the movie has any stakes. Like this scene, where after Cassie almost gets poisoned by Ezekiel, she tries to teach the girls CPR to slow down any poisoning. What's important to my point is this line.
Okay. And when do I stop? You don't stop. If you stop, they die. If you get tired, then you need somebody to take over. Anya, get ready to take over. But you have to pick up the exact same rhythm.
Now, this has the potential to cause some internal conflict within the group, and maybe have some of them address a few of their shortcomings. Maybe Julia goes too slow, Maddie goes too fast and hard, and maybe Anya has a decent pace, but refuses to switch because she believes she could do it all on her own. This at least will give these characters something to work towards throughout the rest of the movie, being able to come together and cover for each other's shortcomings, foreshadowing what makes them such a dangerous force to Ezekiel in the future. But nope, they get it in one try, because development is overrated. God, I hate this so much. Anyway, my suffering isn't nearly done, because soon after this, Cassie abandons the kids to fly to Peru in search of answers about her mother or Ezekiel. Yes, because leaving the girls with Ben's basic ass for 2 weeks is safer than having them with someone who has the power to control Z in real life. God, what's next? Cassie being able to find the exact same tree in the picture that she has from her mother? Oh, come on! So, Cassie meets the Spider Tribe and learns that her mother was originally in Peru because she was looking for spiders that could cure a neuromuscular disorder that Cassie herself would have been born with. And after this Doctor Strange level trip, Cassie gains damn near full control of her abilities.
What the hell is that?
No, Gio. I'm not going to rant about Cassie getting full control of her powers with no training because 1, if I do that, I'm going to pop a blood vessel, and 2, because I just want to be done with this. Anyway, Ben and the girls have to leave the house due to his sister's water breaking, giving Ezekiel a lock on their location. Why the girls have to come is beyond me, but Logic clearly took a vacation during this film's development. Anyway, Ezekiel manages to have them cornered, but is stopped once again by Cassie driving another vehicle because her timing is just absolutely perfect. Alright, let's wrap this up. During the climax, Cassie is able to use her powers to map out a damn near perfect way to escape from Ezekiel, but in the last minute, they get separated. the girls are hanging for dear life while Cassie is staring down Ezekiel. Now, instead of taking this opportunity to use his abilities to finally kill these brats, Ezekiel just stands there and watches Cassie pull no jutsu and astral projection to save the girls and cause the death of Ezekiel. Fuck off! No, I'm done. I am fucking done. Fuck this movie. This is one of the most aggravating films I have ever seen. Characters are blander than white bread, the plot is stupid beyond words, and there are zero stakes or tension that would make this remotely interesting to watch. I have ideas on how this could have been fixed, but frankly, if the writers gave so little of a shit that this is what they thought was acceptable for any kind of viewing outside of mental torture, then why the hell should I give a damn to try and fix it? This movie, easiest F tier I've ever seen. Never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually looking forward to the next movie. Venom, The Last Dance.
2 hours later.
Well, clearly I gotta learn to keep my goddamn mouth shut. Venom Last Dance is without a doubt the worst of this Venom trilogy. Ignoring that this film was the least profitable of the three, the movie at points feels like a parody of itself. While Venom's more comedic side makes Let There Be Carnage more enjoyable to watch, here, Venom is the equivalent of nails on a chalkboard with his humor. This movie goes way past comedy and ends up coming across campy. However, the plot itself is supposed to be taken seriously, as both Eddie and Venom are going up against their biggest threat yet. So at points, it feels like you're watching two completely different movies. Speaking of plots, the movie opens up with our quote-unquote villain of the movie, Null. I have to put quotes up when I say villain because at no point does Null interact with Eddie or Venom once. Instead, he sends these symbiote hunters called xenophages to hunt down the two clowns. For what reason? Well, Null is actually the creator of all the symbiotes and is considered a god. However, the symbiotes locked him away, and for their own safety, the only way to release him is through something called the Codex. Why make a key for a prisoner you have no intention of releasing? Beats me. But to be fair, it actually shocked me more if these films actually had consistent logic. And for context, the Codex isn't your traditional key. It's created when a symbiote brings their host back to life. Meaning, Eddie and Venom has had it this whole time without even knowing. Speaking of which, our two protagonists are currently in Mexico, and after learning that Eddie's currently wanted for questioning as a result of his actions from the last movie, Eddie suggests going to one of his contacts in New York to help clear his name. So after a quick fight, the two head off to the Big Apple. We then cut to the army, who are searching for Eddie and Venom in order to obtain the symbiote. We learn that this section of the army is assigned to Area 55, an underground research facility created to study aliens, or more specifically in this case, symbiotes. Now, how did the army get all these symbiotes, considering that the first movie established that only a few came from the rocket? Well, apparently at some point a meteor also landed on Earth that contained even more of these bastards. Sure, why not? Anyway, the only character I want to point out here is Dr. Payne, because her backstory has what might possibly be the funniest death I've ever seen put to film. Let me explain. You see, she became a scientist because it was the dream of her twin brother, who, when they were kids, died because, and I swear to God I'm not making this up, a lightning bolt struck Dr. Payne's arm, but because she and her brother were about to grab each other's hands, the electrical current jumped from her arm to his and killed him. Oh god, I don't even care that I'm going to hell for this. It is simultaneously the most stupid and hilarious death I've seen in a long time. You know, I really needed that after all this crap. Anyway, we see that Dr. Payne and the General are talking with a symbiote who starts to warn them about Null. Okay, warn is a strong word, considering all he's saying is this.
The darkness has teeth.
What the hell did you just say?
Yeah, this is vaguer than when parents try to explain sex for the first time. Back to our dynamic duo dumbass, the two decide to hitchhike onto an airplane when a xenophage locks onto their position and attacks them. Venom is shown to be severely outclassed by these hunters as they are designed to kill his species. Luckily, Venom was able to throw the Hunter into the plane's engine and be able to quickly escape with Wait a goddamn minute, what happened to the people on the plane? Did they land safely? Did the plane blow up? I don't know, because Venom just destroyed the plane's engine and bailed, practically leaving those poor bastards to die. And it's not even like you killed the Hunter, because they just regenerated. God, lethal protector my ass, you couldn't stop a piece of cake from being eaten, let alone other people. So, after that potential massacre, Venom tells Eddie about Null and explains what the Codex is, as well as revealing that those hunters are only able to track them in the Codex when Venom is fully transformed. On top of that, the only way to get rid of the Codex is for one of them to die.
So how do we get rid of this Codex?
As long as you and I both live, the Codex exists. If one of us should die,
No.
the Codex would die.
That's not gonna work for me.
So wait a minute, this now got me thinking. Does this mean that Venom can just bring Eddie back to life whenever? I don't know about you, but to me, that seems pretty goddamn broken. What the hell are the rules here? Is it only if Eddie dies a certain way? Is it like Call of Duty Zombies where Venom has a time limit to revive his ass before Eddie fully goes down? Can he not do it anymore because they have the Codex? Who the hell knows? We never get an explanation. Look, you guys need to understand. I'm not asking for a film to explain every little thing to me like I'm a toddler. Hell, I encourage showing and not telling. However, when you introduce something as broken as the power of resurrection, you need to set some solid rules. Otherwise, there are absolutely no stakes for the audience to be invested in. Anyway, stranded in the middle of the Mexican desert, Venom takes over a horse as their new way of transportation. Unfortunately for them, the army managed to catch up and blast the two into the river, during which Eddie somehow managed to overpower and kill a trained soldier, and Venom has to transform Eddie to save his life, bringing them to the Hunter's attention. Luckily, the Hunters get distracted by the soldiers enough for Eddie to escape. They manage to run into a random family that are riding to Area 51, and are willing to drop them off in Vegas. Wow, what a nice family that deserves nothing but the best.
This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door.
Never mind, I hope they all catch a 9mm with their face. Regardless, I want us to stop right here and just look at where we're at. We are halfway through this movie, and if you haven't noticed already, there is a glaring flaw, and it seems to be a mistake that Sony keeps making with these movies. That being that Eddie has no character development. Zip, none, zero. He is given diddly dick. I feel like a broken record at this point when I say Eddie is the same character at the end of the film as he is at the start. Hell, throughout the entire Venom trilogy, Eddie barely gets any growth. And I say barely only because technically there was an attempt at growth during the first film. However, it happens so fast, if you blink, you miss it. Eddie Brock may be the most boring protagonist in any piece of superhero media. How in the tentacle porn did you write a character across 3 movies that total in over 5 hours of runtime and not give them a shred, nay, a fucking speck of development?
It sucks monkey butts like all the fucking rest!
Okay, I think I'm calm. Anyway, Vegas, baby! Yep, our heroes finally got to Vegas. Great, now there's only another 2,500 miles to get to New York City. Nope, not gonna crash out. Not gonna crash out. So Eddie runs into Mrs. Chen. Who? This woman that's been in the prior 2 movies, and...
Just a little dance!
What's going on? What's happening? What the Christ is going on? Are you kidding me? The one rule you have given these characters in making sure to not transform, and they break it without a second thought. Why? Why? So they can get some Asian ass? This may be one of the most blatant examples I've ever seen of just not giving the slightest f*** about your script. Genuinely, why should I believe that anyone that took part in the production of this movie gave a damn about the story when they choose to ignore the rules that they themselves established? There's no justifiable reason for Venom to put both Eddie, his own, hell even Mrs. Chen's life at risk just for a stupid goddamn dance number? Dear God, just let this movie just end! Anyway, before this xenomorph reject turned these two into a Jackson Pollock painting, the army comes in, separating Venom and Eddie, and capturing them both. Skipping the part where the family from before manages to sneak into a military base undetected because I'd rather not break my monitor, Eddie wakes up in a cell and gets to talking with a jolly green symbiote. He tells Eddie that he has to keep the codex safe, and the symbiote army that is currently being contained at this base will protect them. Which does make me think of a pretty important question that I think needs to be asked. Why protect Eddie when you could just kill him? Seriously, Eddie's mere existence puts all other symbiotes' lives at risk. Because if he is captured, the symbiote devil incarnate could be summoned. So why do these symbiotes care so much about keeping Eddie alive? He hasn't made any kind of connection with them, so it's hard to believe that not one symbiote thinks that it would be easier just to send Eddie to the Shadow Realm. Luckily, the army has more sense than these alien jackoffs and wastes no time in trying to execute Eddie, saving the world from... Hold it! Alright, I forgot, this rogue scientist whose only role in this movie was to feel sympathetic towards the symbiotes and somehow help Venom escape so he could save Eddie's life again. And say it with me here, the hunters come and attack the base. This leads to all the symbiotes being released and assembling to protect Eddie and the Codex, kicking off our final fight with the army and the symbiotes teaming up to take down multiple xenophages, because I guess they could have always called for backup. However, nothing they do is enough, causing Eddie and Venom to be surrounded, the two sharing a moment before deciding to take one last stand, transforming and dragging all the hunters towards these two containers that could blow them up the Kingdom Come. But at the last minute, Venom releases Eddie, deciding to allow him to live his life as he sacrificed himself to save the day. And here is where the problem with Eddie and Venom as characters comes to bite this film in the ass. This is supposed to be the culmination of this trilogy. Venom sacrificing himself to save Eddie. It should be this big, impactful scene. But it's nothing but hollow, because there has been no change in either of these characters as individuals or as partners. The only reason you'd give a damn about Venom's death is just because you spent over 5 hours watching the character, rather than actually connecting with them. And there's no easy fix for this, as you'd have to add development for Eddie and Venom in not just this movie, but also the prior one. So, let's play a game. What if, in Let There Be Carnage, rather than having Venom and Eddie be apart during most of the film, let's make it more of a buddy cop movie, having them work together to find an escaped Carnage and Cassidy, but their methods are polar opposites. As a journalist, Eddie wants to take a more calculated approach, while Venom wants to be more brash. Over time, however, these two learn to get perfectly in sync, with Eddie using his smarts and quick thinking to help direct the sledgehammer that is Venom. This will later help them in the final fight, making this line,
"You're not a match.
We are,"
actually mean something. We'll also cut out the Tom Holland post-credit scene, as it's absolutely pointless. Now, going into this movie, rather than opening in Mexico, we get a montage of Venom being that lethal protector he wanted to be. We'll skip a couple of years to show that they've been doing this anti-hero business for a hot minute now. This will be important because I want Eddie to start longing for a normal life again, something he came so close to having with Anne from the first movie. This will be a point of friction between him and Venom throughout the film, especially once the xenophage comes to hunt them down, which, in my version, I would make the Codex being a result of achieving perfect synchronization with your symbiote, making this invasion a direct result of Eddie and Venom's actions from the last movie. Now, before heading into Venom's sacrifice, we can have a moment between Eddie and Venom in the family van, and we'll be building off of this line.
Sometimes I think we would have been happier with a life like this. You know?
Yeah.
You said the right thing. You would make a good dad.
Have Venom genuinely ask Eddie why he doesn't want to be a lethal protector anymore. Eddie can reveal that he had a rough childhood, with his dad being the cause of a lot of it. How growing up, all he wanted to do was to be a better man, and a better father than his dad ever was to him. He thought he'd be able to fill that hole with the work him and Venom do, but it wasn't enough. he wants a family, but is realizing that this is just as much Venom's decision as it is his own, because Venom is family to Eddie. Finally, during the sacrifice, Venom's final words to Eddie can be something like, "Live your life, Eddie. Remember everything we have learned in our time together, and make the most of your time in New York. You are going to be an amazing father someday." Look, by no means am I a competent writer, and remember, I do have the power of hindsight, but this concept could make Venom's death much more impactful and make him and Eddie much more relatable as characters. Anyway, after Venom's sacrifice, Eddie gets pardoned for his crimes as long as he shuts the hell up on what happens. We get a cringy New York montage, and I contemplate what degree of arson I want to commit. What a way to end this trilogy of movies. Last Dance is without a doubt the worst of the three, and I think I've gone into more than enough detail into why. Originally, I was going to put this film in the lowest of D tiers, but after writing this portion of the script, I just got angrier and angrier at the film. So congratulations, Venom Last Dance, your ass is joining Madam Web in F tier, because the world would be better off if you just didn't exist. Thank you, God, finally. We have finally gotten to the last movie. It took us a minute, but we got here. So, let's talk about Kraven the Hunter.
When the man comes around.
This film was the final nail in the coffin for Sony's non-Spider-Man universe. And boy, what a nail it was. Kraven the Hunter was a failure of epic proportions. The movie reportedly had a budget of $110 million and only grossed $62 million worldwide. That's pathetically bad and is by far the biggest flop of all these movies. Now, does this mean it's the worst of the bunch? Not really. Don't get me wrong, it's bad, but it had potential. For context, the film follows Sergei Kravinoff, who has become an assassin known as Kraven the Hunter, so I'll be referring to him as Kraven throughout the section. The film opens up in the middle of one of Kraven's hunts in a Russian prison. This scene actually does a very good job at displaying Kraven's skills and abilities to the audience early, as he uses his enhanced strength and agility to kill his target in the prison and escape. He also seemingly has enhanced luck, considering he's basically dodging bullets, as well as this weird animal manipulation power, or whatever the hell this scene is. Regardless, we flash back to when Kraven and his brother Dmitri were just kids, and find out from their father Nikolai that their mother has passed. So, being a clear runner for Father of the Year, Nikolai thinks the best thing for the kids would be to take them on a hunting trip. More specifically, to hunt down a mythically strong lion named Tsar. Yeah, when an animal is given a name because of its killing potential is where I draw the line. Little side tangent here, I was actually curious about other animals that were given names due to their killing potential, so I asked ChatGPT, and they gave me the Tazvo lions, two man-eating lions who killed dozens of railroad workers in Kenya in 1898. And you want to know what their names were? Ghost and Darkness. I'm sorry, I'm not f***ing with that at all. That's just asking to die. But Nikolai feels otherwise, as he believes killing Tsar will make him a legend. It's on this trip where we get more insight on Kraven and Dmitri as characters. Dmitri is heavily focused on their father's opinion of him. Their father believes he's weak and unworthy, leading to this insecurity that will be seen in Dmitri throughout the film. Meanwhile, Kraven's opinion of his father is a lot more outwardly hostile. He believes that it's not impressive for his father to kill Tsar with a gun. Rather, a true legend would fight fair, or as he puts it,
a true legend would fight fair, not with a gun. You would do it one-on-one with only the tools you were born with.
Well, apparently God heard this and decided to put that theory to the test, with Tsar the Lion finding the Kravinoff brothers. And surprisingly, it seems Kraven methods will work. You know, until Nikolai took a shot at it. He's angry! Tsar then beats the crap out of Kraven before dragging his ass into the wild. Well, that's it. I mean, kid's dead, right? He just lost a 1v1 against a damn lion and was dragged off to God knows where. There's just no way he can be found by anyone. Y'all know the gist by now. Just roll the clip.
Bullshit.
This is Calypso. Earlier in the film, she was given this potion by her grandmother as a result of needing to push the plot forward. I mean tarot card readings. But even regardless of this, what are the chances that not only Calypso get this potion, but she will feel a calling to wander off into the wild, find Czar with Kraven in his mouth, and rather than turn this boy into a midday snack, this wild animal just decides to drop him in front of Calypso and dip. Jesus Christ, I've heard of conveniences, but this is such a cosmic coincidence that you'd have better odds getting struck by lightning twice while in a plane. Well, luckily for Kraven, this full restore gave him enough strength to make it to a hospital and recover, with the added bonus of some enhanced abilities based off of animals. Wait a minute. This is just Vixen from DC. She's a superhero who, thanks to an ancient totem that she wears, calls on the spirit of animals that give her abilities such as enhanced strength, speed, agility, reflexes. Yeah, it's Vixen! Anyway, once Kraven is out of the hospital, Nikolai informs his son that he will be pulling him out of school, so he'll be prepared to take over the family business, or crime empire, whichever you prefer. However, this is the final straw for Kraven, and despite Dimitri's pleas to not leave him with their father, Kraven runs away. He ends up taking refuge on some land owned by his mother at some point, and it's here where we see Kraven start to sharpen his skills and eventually become the hunter that criminals will fear. This finally wraps up our flashback, and so far, it could be going worse. I mean, despite the sheer improbability of all these events lining up, we established Kraven's important relationships, how he got his powers, and his reason for becoming the assassin. So far, not too bad. Now, granted, that could just be the fact that I've been exposed to so much Sony garbage that any small speck of competence feels like a full course meal. But at this point, I gotta take what I can get. Anyway, after seeing that Kraven keeps in contact with Dimitri and he takes down some arms dealers, we see him watching a funeral. More specifically, for the mentor of a now grown-up Calypso. Kraven ends up revealing to Calypso that he was the boy she saved all those years ago, and offers that they work together, as with her being a lawyer, she'd have intel that could benefit Kraven. However, Calypso rightfully refuses, not wanting to get involved with Kraven. We now cut to a crime boss named Alexei, who, thanks to a scientist from New York, was given a serum that can turn his skin as thick as a rhino. Yep, Rhino is in this film, and was actually a part of Nikolai's hunting team at the start of the movie, but being berated and called weak by Kraven's father led him to seeking out this scientist. And that's all we get about Rhino for the rest of the film.
I expect nothing. And I'm still let down.
God, look, as much as I find it hilarious that after being called weak once, Rhino proceeds to make it his life goal to ruin the Kravenoffs, it still makes him a boring-ass villain. And like we've seen, this is a recurring problem with Sony's Spider-Man-less movies. Outside of Carnage, every villain has no depth to them. They are all one note with nothing interesting about them. Hell, take any villain from the MCU pre-Endgame and they all have more depth than anything Sony has tried to make. If the villain of your movie isn't interesting, it doesn't give the audience a reason to be invested into the main conflict of the film. Regardless, after this scene that's meant to establish Rhino's powers, we see Nikolai having a business meeting at Dimitri's club, and I must say, for the most part, I really liked how they handled Dimitri in this movie. For context, in the comics, Dmitry Kravinoff becomes Spider-Man's villain, Chameleon, a master of disguise, being able to mimic anyone. The way the film shows this is having Dmitry being a cover artist at his club, as well as having moments where he perfectly mimics his father's voice, most likely as a result to show that he's not as useless as he may seem. It's a nice little touch and helps give Dmitry some depth. Anyway, this meeting ends up turning into a failed assassination attempt on Nikolai, and after... Whatever the hell that was, Rhino discovers that Sergei is Kraven the Hunter, so he decides to hire an assassin called the Foreigner. And yes, that is his literal, comic-accurate moniker. Regardless, Foreigner is one of the most frustrating parts of this movie. Why does this side villain with no personality get under my skin? Well, it's because of his abilities that look like this. Time out. I'm sorry. What the f was that? Was that super speed, teleportation, damn vertigo? I don't have a damn clue because, you guessed it, it was never explained. Lord, if I took a shot every time I had to say that in this video, I'd be getting my stomach pumped by now. Back to Kraven, we see him meet up with Dimitri to spend his birthday with him. After a night of drinking and Kraven sleeping outside because he's not used to a bed, it looks like Rhino has sent his men to kidnap the younger Kravinoff. Kraven fails to stop them, even though he's practically a super soldier. So he goes to his father for answers. Turns out, Rhino gave Nikolai a ransom to pay, but he turned it down. Luckily, Kraven was able to get Calypso to talk to some contacts in order to get a location. So Kraven heads off, and we get to see one of the stupidest infiltrations I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, look at this stuff. He's quite literally breathing the same air as them, and they never noticed him. It looks more like an imitation of bad video game stealth mechanics than anything. But wait, there's more bullshit, as bullets don't seem to affect Kraven, or at least that's my best guess, because there is no better explanation on how this man isn't filled with lead after this scene. And to add even more onto this mountain of plot armor that we have acquired, a rocket ends up sending Kraven down this fall, and he survives. Hell, it seems like it was barely an inconvenience to him, as he goes right back to interrogating a man before being covered by falling rocks. And guess what? He f***ing survives that too.
I don't know about that.
I'm gonna have a stroke. I'm genuinely gonna have a f***ing stroke at this point. Anyway, after realizing this whole thing is a trap, he goes back to Calypso to protect her from Rhino's men trying to clean up their tracks. The two end up going to Kraven's hideout, where we learn that he has been trying to recreate the potion that has given him his powers ever since he ran away. He asks Calypso if she knows how, but she declines, saying that she gave him the only one. She also warns him about his life as the Hunter, and how it could put his loved ones like Dimitri at risk.
Sergei, we're gonna get Dimitri back. But is all of this really worth it?
I'm the greatest hunter on this planet. It's undeniable. There's nobody I can't track down, nobody I can't beat. There's nobody can even touch me. So no, why would I want to stop?
And it was at this moment, when exposed to this character's flaw, that I realized I was an hour and 30 minutes into the film, and we just now were shown a potential character flaw. What's especially annoying about this is that it would have been so easy to have this flaw play into the story from the jump. Let me explain. One of the defining things about Kraven in this movie, besides his powers, is his negative feelings he has towards his father. So, what if, when we are reintroduced to Kraven after the flashbacks, during that fight scene, he has this more cocky, I've never lost attitude. Like he kind of messes with his targets a bit. Then, when meeting with Dimitri, his little brother can express his worry about him, as he feels this darkness in Kraven that has made him feel distant and cold. We can then build off this by having the reason Rhino found out about Kraven's true identity is a direct result of his cockiness from that fight. Maybe it caused him to leave behind some evidence without noticing. This realization that it was his fault that Dimitri got captured leads him to realize that he's becoming a version of their father, solely focused on the personal crusade instead of looking at the bigger picture. And this new mindset could be what gives Kraven the edge against Foreigner and Rhino. This could also play perfectly into Dimitri's character, as after revealing to him that his brother is Kraven the Hunter, it could cause this resentment, leading to a wedge in the relationship that's at the end of the movie.
You're a man just like our father.
No, I'm nothing like him.
This is the kind of stuff that annoys me to my core. Wasted potential. Obviously, this doesn't fit perfectly with the twist of the movie, as well as being an idea that definitely requires to be fleshed out more, but I'm just a normal guy who writes these scripts on the toilet sometimes. If I can see the opportunity of injecting some character into these films, how the hell can't paid writers do the same thing? Anyway, Rhino and his crew find Kraven's hideout and start their search for him in the woods. And after Kraven pulls off a few brutal kills, he is stopped in his tracks by the Foreigner, who has hit him with a poison-tipped fear dart. So, here we are. This assassin has Kraven dead to rights. He starts doing this countdown thing that he does throughout the whole movie for no clear reason, and then
3, motherfucker.
What? That is how this overpowered villain dies because of his compulsion to count? This is pathetic. In my opinion, situations like these is when you know the writers just gave up, as they wrote themselves into a corner, because outside of some ass pull like this, How could you beat this guy? He's got an undefined ability that is more powerful than anything we have seen in this film. The only way to defeat him was through some bullshit. But death by compulsion to be the Count from Sesame Street is a special kind of stupid. Speaking of ass pulls, Calypso, whose jobs it seems to be just to push the plot forward by any means necessary, actually has a second vial of this magical potion and use it to revive Kraven. Oh my god, okay. Alright, the movie is almost done. There is very little time for them to squeeze in any more stupid, so let's just wrap this up. The Rhino and his men, along with the captured Dimitri, try to escape after believing that the foreigner killed Kraven. However, they are stopped by a stampede that Kraven sent to them, putting all their lives, including Dimitri's, at risk. That's it! I'm done! I have reached my limit of bullshit for the year. I'm done. Let's wrap this up. Kraven beat the Rhino, and we learned that it was Nikolai who leaked Kraven's identity that led to Dimitri's kidnapping. After Kraven confronts his father and sending a bear to kill him, the movie ends with a time jump to 1 year later. Dimitri, much to Kraven's disapproval, has taken over their father's business, as well as getting himself enhanced by the same scientist that created Rhino, giving him his full chameleon abilities, putting a wedge between his relationship with his brother. Kraven gets his classic lion vest, strikes a pose in the mirror, and the movie ends. Wow. Okay, Kraven the Hunter does have a few good moments. I enjoyed Sergei and Dimitri's brotherly bond, as well as seeing how their father affected both of them directly. Plus, the twist of Nikolai being responsible for everything was genuinely surprising, like in a good way, as it's perfectly in line with his character. But the movie still isn't good. The final act really craps the bed, and not to mention I am getting sick and tired of following protagonists that have plot armor so thick you need a 50 cal to get through it. So in the rankings, I'm gonna put Kraven the Hunter at the top of D tier. Still hurts to watch, but has a few moments that make me think this idea has some potential. Oh, it's done. It's over. And with that, we have finally reviewed every single movie in Sony's Spider-Man-less universe. Now, going back to the big question from the start of the video, was Sony's former CEO correct when he said, "These are not terrible films. They are just destroyed by critics in the press for some reason"? Are you kidding me? I have never heard a more incorrect statement in my life. You could look me in the eye and say the earth is flat, 2 + 2 = 5, and The Flash was a well-made TV show, and you'd still be more correct than this dumbass. Hell, if you ask me, I think the reviewers were spot on reviewing most of these movies below 20%. Watching these films has been one of the most painful things I've ever done, especially because the best ones were the first 2 that I watched, and even then they are still like jamming my hand with a pencil. These are some of the worst made movies I've ever had the displeasure of watching, and they all have similar problems: protagonists that have no development, boring villains, and plots that require conveniences or deus ex machinas to wrap up. I'm so glad Sony won't be making any more of these movies, because I am done with this studio putting out nothing but crap just to justify their portion of the Spider-Man license, when they should be putting these resources towards other projects. Fuck this universe, and I hope it becomes no more than a distant memory for everyone.
Like a turd in the wind.